any other way to get a message through to us, and you have got a question as part of this webinar, our website's live. Rowan's sitting at his desk and he can take one of your questions. So jump on our website, live chat with Rowan, and he'll run up and bang on the window of our YouTube room here and ask that question. I've got Beck in the room. I just want to thank Beck. I've got Jack in the room. Jack's stressed trying to get this live stream out to you, but we're all good to go. So today we're talking about our Occupational Health and Safety Management System, and it's the webinar. But what we're ultimately talking about is Occupational Health and Safety Management Systems. Yes, some of you have been in some of our webinars before. I try to make them all a little bit different. I bring in real-time context to what we're talking about. And today, as we go through and look at occupational health and safety, I'm going to talk more about you guys today and what you're doing in your life and how you can lead from your position in the organisation. We'll talk about ISO 45001, AS 4801, OH&S 18001. There's a bunch of stuff to talk about, but I'm bringing in some sort of current context, if you like. So every single one of our webinars is different. I don't go over the same content. Some of the content's similar, but we'll have a few different things for you today. And definitely, there's been a bunch of questions come through which have affected or influenced what I've got to talk about today. Shout out to the guys in Canada. Thanks for joining us. Shout out to the guys in the US, in the eastern and western states, and the north and the south of the US. A couple of people registered from the UK. Absolutely excellent. And there's a bunch of people here in Australia watching in the business hours. So thanks for getting up early or staying up late, depending on where you are in the world. It's great to have you online. And so, yeah, for those of you watching, I'm doing my best to try and bring a global view of OH&S to you. Certainly for the Australians in the audience, we're here in Australia. There's been some changes, and you know, we are talking about WHS, Workplace Health and Safety, but globally, it's Occupational Health and Safety, it's OH&S, and so I'm going to use that language today. I'm going to use the global language, not what we use here in Australia. So, yeah, I'm not sure if Australia's made the right decision about going down the WHS path. I definitely think that OH&S is the way to go. That's just my opinion, but I'll get off my soapbox. Okay, Jack, give me another slide. Okay, so just a quick little bit about best practice and what we do here. Best practice is obviously all about certification from one side of things, but the other is about professional development and improvement to support people that are working with management systems. And so what we've got here is our ISO 45001 logo, and that'll be to my right hand side, I think. I'll get that sorted in a second. But looking as I can understand what's right and what's left. So this is the certification. So it's successfully implementing a management system in accordance with ISO 45001 would enable you to display our logo. So we would put you under test, we'd do a best practice assessment, we'd look at your management system, we'd look at how you execute and implement that management system, and we look at what records and evidence you keep, and then a successful review or a successful best practice assessment against that standard would allow you to display that particular logo and reference your organisation. So show your customers, show your suppliers, show your staff that you have some external recognition. And we've got a team of assessors that can help you with that. Now that's obviously one part of best practice. There's another great part of best practice, which is the big shout out today, which is to our training academy. And it's our training academy and the revenue from our training academy that we put straight back into producing events like this for you guys. And I apologise for the delay and the technical hitch. It seems that every single startup we have a technical hitch, and we do our best to get organised, but when we go live with YouTube, there's no going back. So so I apologise for that short delay. But the Best Practice Training Academy has a whole bunch of online training courses that have been recorded and produced, and they're all about the ISO standards, the safety, quality, environment, all those sorts of things, and they sit on the bestpracticecertification.com.au website. So if you were to go to that website and look at the top banner, you'll see a blue button that says Shop Training, and I'd encourage you to go and have a look in that store. Just clicking the button doesn't oblige you to buy anything, but there's a whole bunch of free stuff in there that you can download, and there's some really, really reasonably priced training courses that you can do, and I'd encourage you to go and learn a little bit more. You want to learn a little bit more about internal auditing. You want to learn a little bit more about ISO 45001. you want to learn about ISO 9001 or 14001, get a bit of a well-rounded view of your colleagues' requirements and work that they do in the organisation. There's some great little courses. They're really easy to purchase. It's just a case of there's an intro video with each course that explains what the course is about. There's a purchasing process. Then that course is yours. It creates a little pigeonhole, if you like, or a little place for you in our training academy, and it allocates all your courses, and you can go back there any time. It gives you a username and a password. It's all automatic. You get a username and a password and your course, and it's not like going to a classroom where you do the course and then it's gone. Here in the Best Practice Training Academy, you get the opportunity to come back and see that content. So in the same way as we're recording this webinar, and you can come back and see this webinar anytime, you got the opportunity to obviously to collect this recording and save it somewhere, and the same applies to our training courses. So please look over there and have a look. It helps out the Training Academy here at Best Practice, and then we turn that revenue back into more of this content, which is absolutely fantastic. So we'd appreciate your support there. So the other aspect, and some of you may know, and some of you may not, is that we're very, very active on YouTube. And in fact, this webinar is being broadcast using an engine that sits behind YouTube. And of course, if you'd like to know more about how that all works, I'm always happy to show people. But more importantly, just have an understanding that if you're watching through our Training Academy, there is a small button down the bottom that you can press view on YouTube, and you can that's the place if you want to place comments against the video, and you can click that button. So if you haven't done that already, go for it. If your feed drops out in this presentation, don't panic. We're going to send out the recording. And equally, if you just have a look at those social media handles, and this has probably been one of my biggest challenges in the last few weeks, is to try and get the message out there that we're very active on these platforms, and a lot of organisations that got a problem.
Yeah, with wirecast.
Yep.
It's got a demonstration running over the top.
Has it?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Let me just try and fix this.
For the customer?
Yeah, it's the wirecast itself.
Right. Okay. Is it killing the whole screen?
No, just
over the text.
It comes over and says this is a demonstration by wirecast.
Right. Okay.
I was hoping it might just be this one.
This
I
is
don't
a
think there's
demonstration
anything
of
to do
Don't worry about it.
wirecast.
Keep going. Okay, my apologies. Technical hitch. We'll keep going. So the wirecast logo you can see there. Looks like we've got a small issue there, so we'll just keep proceeding. So just ignore that, and I apologise. Okay, just waiting for the presentation to catch back up again. Here we go.
This is a demonstration of wirecast.
Okay, so my apologies for that delay. So I think one thing that's really important is that the Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram and Snapchat logos here at Best Practice aren't just because we put them on our website. There's something happening on all of those platforms on a, if it's not every day, it's every second or third day. We are experimenting, starting to experiment with Snapchat. So if you're a Snapchat user, start engaging with us. It's a good opportunity to sort of get one-on-one with us as we start to play with how we can actually use that platform to help you and interact with you. You get to see what's happening on a day-to-day basis. So Beck is starting to play with that. And then obviously my LinkedIn handle. So anybody in the presentation, if you're watching this, if you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, please find me, and I'd encourage you to use that great platform. Just find me on LinkedIn, search, and then hit connection request. I'll accept that connection, and then that's a great way to send me messages backwards and forwards. I get hundreds and hundreds of thousands of emails, hundreds every day running this business and the other parts of what I have to do for my responsibilities. But LinkedIn and the messaging system in LinkedIn is a really great way for me to answer your questions directly and for you to get to me directly, because I check that every afternoon when I get home from work. So I sort of take a break, go spend some time with the family and play with the kids and those sorts of things, and then once they've all gone to bed, I get the opportunity to go back and look through those LinkedIn messages every evening. Or if I'm on getting on an airplane waiting at airports, that's the place to interact with me on LinkedIn. Okay, so that's enough about best practice. I've got some great content for you, so Jack, let's get into it. And I apologise for the Wirecast banners. I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but we'll solve that. Okay, so let's talk about occupational health and safety management systems. So we're running a company here at Best Practice. I've been out to see a few companies this week. It's the middle of the week here in Sydney, Australia. It's Wednesday. And I've been out to see a couple of clients this week, and I've looked at their organisations with some of my team. And to a certain extent, with some of those visits, we looked at OH&S, Occupational Health and Safety, and we were talking to them about their management systems, but we're also talking to them about some of the risks and hazards that they have in their organisations. So what I'm concerned with here for the rest of the presentation is how are hazards and risks managed, and how can we do that strategically? So let's come to this webinar and your thought process of how do you strategically manage safety in your organisation? How are you thinking about the business plan, if you like? And we'll talk more about those top tips as we get into this presentation. But how are we looking at the priorities around OH&S? What are the injuries and incidents that are likely to happen in the organisation, the injuries and incidents that are happening, the unsafe aspects of the industries that you work in. So my questions to you are, what are the unsafe aspects of the industry that you work in? What are the injuries and incidents that are likely? Now, I do appreciate that some of you work in office-based corporate environments, and I've had a look at the list of registrations, and I appreciate that. So when we're looking at that, in some of the corporate structures that we have, psychology is an important aspect, and the psychological impact of the workplace, the long work hours of some of the corporate people. So while it might not be unsafe, like it's not a building site or a mine site or a factory, but from a corporate perspective, we're seeing corporate OH&S issues like psychology, burnout, bullying, those sorts of things, a lot of anxiety, a lot of frustration built around organisations and how organisations may be not as well managed as they could be. So when we're thinking about hazards, it's not just necessarily about the physical, chemical, biological hazards that exist, but obviously the psychological hazards. So we start to think about that. So ultimately what an occupational health and safety management system is all about is producing this, or creating a safer environment, ultimately reducing injuries and incidents, and then obviously that's got a connection to cost, so we're minimising the costs of injuries and incidents, and the relationship of that cost structure with trying to reduce those injuries and incidents, and then obviously increase production. So it's not just the cost of the claim, it's the cost on the business, and then obviously helping organisations continuously improve their safety performance. So I'll just talk about an organisation that I did spend some time with a little while ago, which was a security organisation, and that they provide security and security guards. And in their organisation, they've had 2 murders. So 2 of their security guards have been murdered. So they've been at work doing their job, either for that organisation or another organisation, and then they've been murdered on the job. And what's that all about? Well, they've obviously upset a member of the community where they were working, and it wasn't here in Australia. It was in another country. So they've upset a member of the community. Now that member of the community has come back out of the community a couple of days later with a bugbear or a concern, and as actually there's been an altercation, and that guy, the 2 people have lost their life. So that's quite extreme, and we're not always talking about that, but that's an unsafe aspect of that industry. So what we're starting to think about is, okay, well, how can we start to put preventative strategies in place? So more training for those guards on managing psychology and managing the situation when there's an altercation or an incident, so that there's not sort of this, want of retribution on the guard. They're just there to obviously do their job and keep the organisation safe, but equally that it doesn't happen again as often. So that's what the management system's all about. Now, what we've got here on the screen, and if I think I need to move out of the way, correct me if I'm going the right direction, is that we've got the 3 logos of the 3 different management system standards that we use here at Best Practice, which is AS 4801, Occupational Health and Safety Assessment System 18001, or OSHA 18001, and then ISO 45001. So that's it's something to have a think about. But ultimately, what I'll say at this point in time, that all of those standards are very, very similar. And one of the questions we'll talk about in the Q&A that's come in is what's the difference? And I'll talk about some of those subtle differences. Am I far enough out of the way? I haven't moved across yet. So a little bit of a lag with our display at the moment. So when we are looking at those management system standards, those international documents provide the guidance for how to set up a safety management system. They talk about the policies that we need to write. They talk about the process that we put in place for hazard identification, risk assessment, and control. They talk about defining processes for what do we do in the case of an emergency. And it's not just about providing first aid and repairing the person's injury. It's about doing an investigation and looking at the opportunities for correcting the organisation. Looking at how we can correct processes, looking at how we can go through and improve the organisation and ultimately improve the performance. One thing you'll notice about our logos here for these particular standards is, yes, they're a tick, if you like, in terms of getting approval, but they're a performance over time graph. So ultimately what we're focused on here at Best Practice is helping you with things like this webinar or an on-site assessment or a training course to improve your performance. And so when you look at that Best Practice logo, that's what that's all about. It's obviously about looking at performance improvement opportunities, but more importantly, before any of that, is getting a clear understanding, I think, first and foremost, of your areas of deficiency in terms of your performance. And that's where our graph sort of, it dips down and then it goes on to improve. Okay, Jack, thank you. So let's just quickly have a talk about what makes a successful occupational health and safety management system. And I think really there's two parts to this. I observe a lot of effort goes into putting black words on white paper. You open your Microsoft Word document and you start typing a policy and creating a form, maybe writing a procedure. And I see a lot of work, and I probably see, across the thousands of organisations we've worked with, I see too much effort, in fact, put into, sitting at a computer screen and typing up a document and saving it to a folder, and this is how we're going to run things. Recently, really interesting discussion last week with a client about, our system's not very good, but we're contracting to another company. It's a building contractor. They're contracting to another company, and we're going to use the other company's management system. Or there's one new system. My brother-in-law actually on the weekend went away with my sister and my brother-in-law on the weekend to a family holiday, and my brother-in-law is talking about his organisation, and he's saying, well, we've got two systems and we're not quite sure which one to use, and they're being implemented out on site. What should we do? And so, occupational health and safety management systems, it's not about the documents and the policies and procedures, and I would almost encourage you to not have that stuff. Put more effort into building behaviours and cultures and the processes. So what happens when someone hurts themselves? Well, everyone rushes in to help. So that's a management system. Like it's humans responding to a situation, and a management system is all about, okay, well, the situations that don't come up so often, how should we respond? And that's ultimately what it's about. So a successful system then is management commitment, and it starts with management commitment. And management commitment could be that someone's hurt themselves and everyone rushes in to help, and that's excellent. That's sort of that human nature. So we build on that and we say, okay, well, something's wrong. If something's wrong with the company and we see a deficient area of performance, everyone rushes in to help. Management dives in to help and improve the organisation and improve the situation. So that's really if I can give you that realistic commitment of what management commitment looks like. It's not like, management read the document and, marked it up and put red comments on it and all those sorts of things. That's not management commitment. Management commitment's about, the positive response you get from your top management and your senior managers and your supervisors and the organisation about getting in and helping to fix a problem. Another part of obviously successful system is employee involvement. What does that look like? So you've got a whole bunch of truck drivers. You've got a big fleet of trucks, and there's a whole bunch of truck drivers or lorry drivers for you guys in the UK, a whole bunch of lorry drivers, and they know how to safely operate a vehicle.
Demonstration of wirecast.
So having them involved to start to talk about, how fast to take a corner and what type of weather conditions to drive in and those sorts of things, they're going to be, sort of more on the money or more on the point around what are realistic controls to implement, what's going to be a safe way to operate, what they're happy with, what they can implement with the skills that they've got. Now, as a manager, it is important to cut through the negativity that might come about change and understand what, from a change perspective, what they're upset about, but then from an improvement perspective, what they care about. So that's really a leadership and management sort of skill that needs to be acquired to sort of cut through that. But definitely what I can say is that having employees involved and consulting with them on what do you guys think is the safest way to operate? What are the issues that we've got in terms of, what we need to improve? Got a question from Ryan? Someone's hit the live chat. So just add that to the Q&A and we'll bring it into the presentation. So what we've got there is from the second part, the third part I'm up to is hazard identification and control, is that a successful system has a process to identify hazards, and then once we look at those hazards we say, well, how are we going to control them? And I've got a really good case study in a couple of slides time around that. Obviously compliance and identifying compliance requirements and understanding what it is that we need to comply with. So your legal requirements, so where you operate, what jurisdictions are you in from a compliance perspective, and then obviously the element there of training. So good successful systems got training. So we make some changes in the organisation, we update the policy. How do we actually communicate with people, and how do you guys communicate with people? And thinking that through, and I'll just talk about us. We're running best practice, we're human, we stuff things up all the time, or we try and minimise the collateral damage of those mistakes and then move on really quickly. So in an executive strategy meeting this week on Monday, our systems manager, our compliance manager, is quite frustrated with me because he's there's no commitment and we're a sales focused organisation. I'm like, we are committed, but tell me what that looks like. And so when we talk about training, it's about saying, okay, well, what training do people in the organisation coming back? What people in the organisation, what's their level of skill, and are they competent and feeling confident? And I guess it's a question of confidence. Do people feel confident to do what you're asking? And so how do we help them to feel confident? Not just we give them training and we just expect them to implement the task. So can you have a look at for me when you're thinking about training is what skills and experience do we need to provide, and how will we do that to have our people feel confident to implement our systems, and confident to implement the controls, and confident to use the safety equipment? Not competency, confidence. And that's something we look at here at the Best Practice Training Academy. Is our courses in the Training Academy and these webinars, they're all about giving you confidence. We don't give you, yes, there's little certificates, but then some of our courses are not recognised because our courses are just about giving you some confidence and some knowledge to go and do something further. So that's something I'd ask you to consider. Is it's not always about looking outside the organisation for a training provider and spending lots of money. It's about understanding and liaising with your team, the employee involvement around, well, what would help you guys to feel more confident to do this task that we're asking. And obviously the last part is continuous improvement. So we stuffed something up and we fixed it, and we stuffed something up and we fixed it. How can we look at opportunities to learn from that experience and then look at improvement? And we're making improvements every day here at Best Practice as we grow this organisation, and we're growing very, very quickly. And not only are we trying to fix things that we break, but we're finding that every day we get a little bit bigger as an organisation, and that changes the way we need to operate on a constant basis. So, probably the most important part of a successful occupational health and safety management system is how do you manage improvement? How we manage it here at Best Practice is that every Monday we have a set agenda and our executive gets together and we list all the issues that we've got, and we have a process where we say, right, what's the issue? And then we discuss it and then we solve it, and we allocate responsibilities. We write it down on our to-do list. So all the executive managers here at Best Practice, including myself, have a to-do list, and we work through and execute the items on that to-do list. And that sees us very efficiently
This
continually
is a
improve our
demonstration
whole
of
management
wirecast.
system. So not just the safety part here at Best Practice, but the whole management system. It doesn't mean that we don't stuff things up. We do make mistakes, but what we do is we continually improve over time. Okay, Jack, thank you. Okay, so when we start to get down to the nitty-gritty of obviously occupational health and safety management systems, there's this core hazard identification, risk assessment and control. And that's something that I want you to have a think about, is what's your sort of tool for priority, and what's the way that you go about using
wirecast.
and understanding how you can prioritize the issues that you've identified. And so this little case study I've got here is obviously a brick, and the possibility to drop, there's a hazard that I could be carrying bricks and I could drop those bricks on my foot or on my toes. And we've shown a pair of safety boots here, and so what we start to think about is, okay, well, if I'm carrying a brick with my hand, what's the likelihood of, or what's the potential for me to drop that brick on my foot? And we can look at our little risk tool here, and we can say that it's possible. It's possible that after you've carried 50 or 100 bricks, that we've got this situation where we could then have this, dropping of the brick. Okay, so we look at that likelihood. So yes, it's possible. It's not. Is it likely? It's not really likely. I've got pretty strong hands, so it's possible. It's not unlikely. I think probably for every 50 bricks I pick up, I probably drop one, maybe two. And then what are the consequences? Now, if I'm on the building site with the bricks with bare feet, no shoes on, then of course the consequence could be moderate or significant. And so if we said possible and then moderate or significant, we get a response which is medium or medium to high. Now, if it was very likely that we drop the brick because we haven't got very strong hands or not a good system for carrying bricks, or we're carrying too many, likely or very likely, then it could potentially be high. Like if I drop the brick on my foot, I will break a bone. So that's an injury. And so we won't talk too much about the types of injuries and the severity of injuries. We're just talking about, very basic risk assessment here of of a situation. So we've now got a score. So we've got a score of, say, medium or medium to high. Now that in isolation is not important. But once we start to look at an organisation that's got hundreds of people, or tens or hundreds or thousands of people doing tens or hundreds or thousands of different tasks, we start to become, as a manager, overwhelmed with, well, what should we focus on first? And so risk has, on a risk assessment like this, has two key drivers. One is the driver to focus on solving the individual problem by itself, and then one is the driver to prioritise which problems we focus on first. So let's just talk about solving this problem first. This particular problem can be solved with, I believe, focusing on reducing the consequences first. So let's look at our little table and say, if we were to put the steel cap or safety shoes on and we drop the brick on our foot, would it still hurt? Yes, of course it would, because I've done it. I can tell you from experience it still hurts, but not as much. And so we've reduced the impact, if you're using our table here, to maybe minor. Might bruise or just hurt for a little while, but it's not going to be a permanent injury where we've got a broken bone or scars or a cut or a laceration on our foot. And so the first part of the risk assessment, which is about managing the hazard or the risk itself, is to focus on trying to reduce the consequences, because if we can reduce the consequence, it doesn't really matter how many times it happens. And then we want to focus on potentially reducing the likelihood. Now, if we go back to the client I talked about earlier with murders, obviously we want to, it's not about reducing the likelihood of there being a murder, it's about reducing, and that's that a member of the community comes back and kills one of our guards. It's about, okay, how can we reduce the consequence? So if we can avoid having any murders and people losing their lives or fatalities, then that's going to be better, I think, than reducing the likelihood, if that makes sense. Now, that's my opinion, and I'm happy to have an argument with you later on over social media about that. But definitely, I'm not saying don't focus on the likelihood. I'm saying focus on the consequences in those two instances. So, and you can ask yourself the decision. Okay, well, what's the hazard we've just identified? Would it be better to reduce the consequence or the likelihood? So, if we pull the consequences all the way down, then we can start to say, well, how can we reduce the likelihood? I'm not going to go into the hierarchy of control today. That'll be for another presentation. But we can start to say, well, how can we eliminate this altogether? And if you look at 7-Eleven globally, gas stations, here in Australia we call them a petrol station or a service station. 7-Eleven are starting to put their staff behind barrier screening. So in the event of a robbery or a hold-up, they can't be injured. And that's a safety thing. Obviously the cash can't be stolen, but they can't be injured. Now it doesn't stop someone pointing a gun through the screen. Obviously that's going to be the ultimate in terms of what happens, but it does help to minimise the access to people. So we can start to think about that. But there are certainly, in public train stations in many of the big cities in the world, the ticket operators that sell the tickets to trains are behind a security screen. So we can start to understand now from a public safety perspective the different types of controls, but we obviously want to try and eliminate it. So ticket machine. So a ticket machine is a great way in the context of a public train station. Ticket machine is a great way to sell tickets, and it's difficult to hold up a ticket machine. It's easy to hold up a ticket booth or a ticket operator, and so we've removed our employees from that unsafe situation. So that's just a little example of the brick and the boot, which is something I talk about a lot, and it's a good example for you guys to take away and say, well, okay, let's get a boot and let's get a brick and talk about that. Now, just looking at this screen, if I was to come over here and I have the brick above my head, if that hand was to drop that brick on my head, then of course that's going to hurt. So I could put a helmet on, but a brick on the helmet's still going to hurt. So how can we take the brick away? So can we have an engineering control in place? Can I be in a different place? Can I stand away from the brick? And so that area where the brick might fall is quarantined. So there's those sorts of things to think about with the solutions to minimise the consequence. If you can take me out of the situation, then there's no potential for me to be harmed. So it's about looking at, okay, well, can we take our people away from that hazardous situation, or can we reduce obviously the consequences? Thanks, Jack. How are we going for time? So I guess something that I've learnt to sort of start to bring this together for you from a safety perspective and a safety management system is, I feel that a good opportunity here is for us to focus on culture, and culture is about behaviours and creating behaviours. And so one of you might say, well, why is there a hand on the screen? And what's this hand all about? And for me, the hand is about how can we have something that we can use and refer to that will be a reminder rather than a big long policy document. And so a really basic principle that I learned probably 15 years ago was teaching teams of people and observing teams of people and their ability to work from a safety perspective around identifying hazards. And so what we did here is we said, well, in the situation we're going into this situation, we need to do a risk assessment or a hazard identification so we can identify, what might be safe or unsafe, is to have this really great behaviour. And that's why there's a hand here, is to say, well, the different types of hazards. So they're going into a situation, they're starting work. What might be the physical things that could hurt me and look around? What might be the biological things around me that could hurt me? Insects, the bush, or forest, plants in the forest, algae, fungus, all those sorts of things. So we've got physical, biological, chemical, so paints and chemicals and all those different things that could potentially hurt me. Psychological, so we've got physical, biological, chemical, psychological hazards. So that brings in the corporate aspects if there's a lot of work and stress and bullying and all those sorts of things. Or a combination of those things. So when you put a physical environment in terms of temperature and maybe a chemical together, they become an explosive environment. Independently, they're inert, but when you put a hot environment and petrol or gasoline or diesel together, that can potentially be an explosive environment. So, physical could be a thermal environment, very, very cold or very, very hot. So hypo or hyperthermia. causing those sorts of things. So I think that's a really great way for your people on the ground. So this is, I'm hoping you can take this away from this webinar and go out to all of the other people that you work with and communicate to them, not in a policy or a procedure, but then just when they're working every day, and you're taking it to them and you're saying, so guys, girls, people, when you're working every day, I just want you to be aware that, have a look around you. Is there anything physical that could hurt me? Is there anything in the temperature, bricks over my head, scaffolding, cranes, construction, equipment, trucks, roads, planes, gravity, all those things? Is there anything physical? Is there anything biological around me that could hurt me? I'm working in a forest. I'm working with fungus. I'm working with mold. I'm working with disease, sewage, water, floods, cyclones, all the biological things. Any chemicals around us, any mixtures of chemicals, any different types of chemicals, concentrations of chemicals, volumes of chemicals. Is there any psychological, part of the community or internally in the workplace, long work hours, bullying, those sorts of things, or a combination of those things? And it's a really great way to just have something that's with me. I'm fortunate enough to have 4 fingers and a thumb on this hand and 4 fingers and a thumb on that hand. And it's a really great way for me to just remember that I'm carrying my checklist to identify my hazards with me every day. And it's a really great behavioural and cultural piece with your organisation. So I see lots of organisations spend lots of money on pads and Take 5 and all those sorts of things to do hazard identification and risk assessment. But this is a really great way to say, well, what's the hazard? And then is it high, medium, low risk? And so we can start to do, there's our risk tool. It's a really great way to, and I can go more into that in another presentation, but it's right here. It's with me. It's not something that I need to write a document. It's not something I need to buy. It's something that, with good communication like this on a training program, you can show them this webinar. It's a really great way to manage hazards. And I'm hoping that's your gold nugget for the day, that you don't need to develop anything. It doesn't cost any money. And the vast majority of the people that work for your organisation have got this device on the end of a limb, which is quite entertaining and something to look at. So let's move on and let's just quickly talk about. So there's been a bunch of people wanting to know what's happening with ISO 45001, and like any international standard, it's delayed. The production of any international standard, it's delayed. So what is it? ISO 45001, for those of you that don't know, is the first attempt internationally to globalise a safety management system standard for organisations to use as the framework or the guidance document to build a safety management system in their company. What policies do you need? What processes do you need? How will you go about managing all the different hazards and risks? What will you do in the event of an emergency? And how will you continually improve using internal audits and objectives and monitoring and measurement and management review? And so it's the first attempt globally to do that. Now, there are obviously different countries in the world, many different countries with many different cultures. And then there are first world, second world and third world countries, if we want to use that language. And there are definitely some countries that either can't afford to implement safety management systems. They don't have the legal structures in place yet. They don't have the resources and the funds, or they don't have a cultural fit. They're different forms of governance and management in those countries. And in some instances, the governments of those countries don't value life in the way that other countries do. So needless to say, it's a challenge. There's been a lot of international representation around this particular standard. There's obviously been a huge change to the leadership of the United States, which hasn't significantly affected this process, but I can say that it has had some impact. And so what's happened is there's been a small delay as I guess everybody stopped and said, well, what's happening with the US election? So that's had a small impact, not a major impact, but a small one. But it is a difficult document to prepare. It is simple. It's a great standard. I think it's probably one of the best international standards that's ever been written. It's not my bias towards safety. It's definitely the way it's been structured. And in following that standard, you can use, if you're clever, and I bet you guys are clever, you can use that system that standard prescribes to manage any type of risk. So if you can see through OH&S and you can see through to risk, you can use that standard to have a risk management system in place to manage financial risk or quality risk or environmental risk. And that's partly helped by a thing called Annex SL, which I'll talk about in another slide, but it's that the standard is structured to marry up with the quality and environment and information security management standards. But more importantly, it's just a good generic risk management structure. 45001 obviously has a primary focus on managing occupational health and safety, and obviously identifying hazards, assessing risks, preventing incidents, and it's the primary intent of the standard. As I've already talked about, it can be used in other areas of risk. Now, the International Labour Organization estimates about 2.3 million fatalities per year. And if you have a look at the ISO website, it gives a bit of a backstory, but that's ultimately been the driver to developing this standard, is starting to have simple frameworks, simple risk management frameworks for poorer countries with less resources to follow a very basic, behavioural-based way of managing safety. And really, people talking and training people, and liaising with people, using a principle, say like the hand, for example, is that great opportunity to run through and teach that behaviour. And ultimately, we could all improve a lot. Thanks, Jack. What's next? Okay, so just a quick update on ISO 45001 and where it's at. Credit of this table goes to ISO, and it's come from the ISO website today, and we are at the inquiry stage. So the second, just about start the second inquiry stage from a standards perspective, soliciting more feedback, and we'll move next month, so it's April, in May, moving into that phase. And then obviously into the approval stage, and then the expected publication is February next year. So that's about as close as I can get. There's a whole bunch of meetings scheduled for the committee members to meet. I think the bulk of the comments have been made from what I know from a few people that have sort of mentioned where the committee's up to. The bulk of comments have been made. There's very little negotiation now around what the structure of the standard is going to look like. So if you were to download a copy of the draft standard and to start following that standard and implementing it in your organisation, you wouldn't need to make too many significant changes. So what I'm saying is, yes, you can take that standard now and follow it to implement it in your business, and you won't be wasting any time or any money. What you will then create is a great opportunity to be a long way in front. So the debate that's happening around any change to the standard, it won't be a radical change. It's following a very simple risk framework. It's following ISO 14001, and you may see some small requirements. There's a little bit of debate about consultation and what that means. There's countries like Australia where consultation is mandatory, so a mandatory structure of consultation with people. But there are countries that maybe not as, they don't support consultation as much as we do here in Australia. So they may be the subtle changes, but that'll really be it'll be up to you. If you wanted to adopt a best practice, global best practices, then a consultative system where you can have a formal consultation process with staff and employees, it's a good thing to do anyway. So I think, people are panicking about, what if I do this and it doesn't go ahead. It's going ahead. It's been going for a long time. 18001's been around for a long time. AS 4801, the Australian Standard Safety Management Systems, that was released in 2001. So that's been around 16 years already, and 45001 essentially follows that structure. There's very little difference in the intent. In fact, there's no difference in the intent of the 4801 versus the 45001 standard. So you can follow that, and you can have some confidence that you can go ahead. So please don't wait. Please start implementing your system. Start reading the standard and learning the standard. Don't be scared of any changes. Please get started on it. And if you need help or you've got questions about specific clauses, either buy the course that we have in our training academy, or if there's one sort of specific question, I'm more than happy to help you with an answer to your question on LinkedIn. So go right ahead and get stuck into it. Thanks, Jack. Okay. Sorry, just on that point, last point is we're already doing audits. So we've already audited about 100 companies to 45001. We've started. We're certifying those companies to the draft standard, and those companies are already getting the benefits of that. So, so get started. Okay. So, what else we got there? So, quick summary of this particular slide, because I'm conscious of time for everybody. The standard takes a risk-based approach to safety management, which is let's identify what our issues are and then start to prioritise. Become silent on writing countless documents from other previous standards. So I think, my point there is that it's around about creating these behaviours, like this, and not having thousands and thousands of templates and procedures. I feel it's more important to focus on writing objectives, having a dashboard of statistics that you look at, and then doing internal audits and management review rather than writing lots of procedures. So if you're writing procedures and getting your system ready, stop. Do monthly or quarterly management reviews, set objectives, and track what are the most important numbers to measure around safety in your company, and focus on measuring those. Get good, robust reporting statistics, and let your business, your team, your employees figure out how to deliver winning results on those. Don't go and write thousands of documents. Think about your compliance requirements, think about your statistics, and set that system up. That's my recommendation of the areas to focus. Obviously, the standard follows a thing called Annex SL, so it tightly knits with the other standards like ISO 14001 and ISO 9001. So the international quality standard, and from a numbers perspective, it's about 1 to 1,000. So it's about 1,000 companies have a quality standard compared to, say, one company with a safety management system. So there's a long way to go for safety to catch up to quality. But all of those organisations have lots and lots of staff. They would have something in place from a safety perspective, but not a robust safety management system. And then obviously it's very exciting for the global safety industry to have this new standard, and it reinforces the self-evaluation improvement cycle that I talked about. Plan, do, check, act. So plan, set some objectives, just go away and do it. Check your performance and how you're tracking, and then act on that. So the most important thing is this is my question, and write this down in your notes, what are the most important statistics and metrics and measures in your company from a safety perspective? What are the most important things? Please spend the next 24, 48 hours, till the weekend, thinking about the most important numbers in your company, and do you have a clear picture of your organisation's performance? Thanks, Jack. Okay, so we're coming to the end of the presentation, and I think I've got sort of one last story to just reiterate here, and it's the second point, which I'll get to in a moment. Our top focus points for managers, for you guys out there, what should you focus on? So we've done thousands of assessments of organisations, and these really summarise the deficiencies that we see. The first is to conduct a high-level risk workshop across your organisation that looks at, in the business that we're in, these are the safety exposures that we have. This is what we're exposing our people to, our customers to, our suppliers to. So in continuing to choose to operate this organisation, these are the risks that we take. Then we can start to say, well, what's important, what's not important, what are high consequences, what are low consequences, what's likely, what's not likely. We can do that. Now, it's not just about doing one risk workshop, it's about doing it frequently. I'd recommend quarterly. That can be resource intensive, but it's definitely not once and forget. It's definitely something that's on an ongoing basis, and start to have lots of people in your organisation involved in shorter and more simple risk workshops, so that everybody can start to learn this, one-handed principle about identifying hazards, and then you can start having great conversations around, okay, well, what's going to be a safe way to manage that thing, if you like. Okay, now my opinion about one of the most important things for you guys watching this webinar is this. It's about developing a short, simple business plan for what you're going to focus on yourself in safety and managing safety in your organisation, and then taking that to your CEO, your executive, your C-suite, CFO, whoever the person is, your operations director, and saying, this is my business plan, this is what I'm working on. And in that business plan, these are the metrics, these are the measures of our organisation that I'm working to improve. Take it or leave it. And What this is about
Demonstration
trying
of
not to get
wirecast.
too frustrated when you feel that top management's not buying into your area. Because don't forget that they're paying your salary or your wage or your money to you to actually manage this issue. And if it's anything like me here, it's like, yes, I care about it, but I also care about ensuring we collect the money from our customers and pay the salaries of our staff. So I actually care more about all of my people getting paid than about the safety. You know, it's not about more or less, but it's about like, well, if I haven't got money to pay people, then I might as well just send them home. And so my daily focus is on that, and I pay someone else to watch safety. I'm not, and that's just my job here at Best Practice. My job here at Best Practice is to educate you guys and then manage the financial risk of this business. And I pay somebody who's got an equal level as me from decision-making authority. I'm not going to stop him from doing anything. It's to say, well, you manage safety. And so that's what this writing of a business plan is all about. It's about embracing your responsibilities and stepping into your role with confidence and saying, here's my business plan, here's the numbers that I'm going to manage, and then in a month's time you say, I did this on my business plan, and look at this great result. So write yourself a little business plan, 1 page, 10 points. Here's my business plan for the quarter, and here's the number, and then just focus on that number and focus on improving that number. If it's reducing injuries or a particular type of injury, just religiously focus on that every single day so that you can reduce that number, and then your plan will start to take shape. Define the measure, I just talked about that, and the metrics of the business. Publish the dashboard or the dashport that reports all of the OH&S performance. So you start to share that around the organisation, and there's a common comment: what gets measured gets watched. So what gets watched gets improved. So it's about having that dashboard and really running through that process. And then obviously the last point there in terms of being successful is developing a learning needs analysis and a training delivery plan. And that'll probably be one of the biggest deficiencies. We don't see enough master and apprentice type training. We see lots of, there's a course and we'll do this training, but the one-on-one stuff. And so I've got 2 people here in the room helping me, and they're learning how to do this, and they're watching and they're listening. And so I've got 2 apprentices today, Jack and Beck, and both getting smiles from them. And so it's about that process. How do we run this and how do we improve that, and having people involved and the involvement of people. Okay, Jack, what do we got? Okay, quick bit about the Best Practice Training Academy. We have a couple of courses that are very relevant to what we've been talking about today. The first course that we've got available, and I'd encourage you to have a look at it, we'll send the link out, is to purchase the ISO 45001 course. I've gone clause by clause through the standard for you, and I've given you an explanation for what I believe is the intent of that clause and how to approach that clause from a simple, user-friendly perspective. So I'd encourage that. It's a great course, it's great value, it's a lot of fun, and once you purchase that course, it's yours forever. So you get your username and password, and you can log in anytime. And it's a really great thing to listen to. So yes, there's presentations, but it's something that you can watch the course, but then you can also listen to it like a podcast. So if you've got a mobile device, you can put it on your mobile device and put your earbuds in and catch a bus or a train or travel and listen to it like a podcast. So great little course that I'd recommend you having a look at. There's another great course which is, it's got a bit of length to it, but you do it in parts, which is our internal auditors course. Now, here at Best Practice, it's obviously all about learning and confidence. So the course is a great little course to give you some confidence to do internal audits and understand what the standard says and build out your management system. So again, have a look in the training portal at that course. That's there on the screen. And the final course I'd encourage you to have a look at is the induction course. We've produced an induction product that you can purchase for your organisation, and you can show to all of your staff when they start, me talking obviously, but I talk about what it means to have a management system, what it means to participate in a company that's certified, what it means to be part of this thing that's about business improvement, and how to engage with your managers and supervisors. So the induction product's really about us helping you with your inductions with every new staff member, and it's a course that you buy once. Again, you get the username and password, you can choose the license, so you choose how many staff you have, purchase that great course, and then show that to everybody new when they start.
This is a
You
demonstration
can,
of
pick out the
Wirecast.
videos of that particular course. I think if you watch them all, it's about an hour. But there might be one 20-minute video out of that that you can show to every single person when they start at your company. You don't need to be certified with us here at Best Practice to buy that particular induction course, but I'd recommend you click on our training academy on our website and have a look at the introduction video anyway. So there's every course on our website. It's got a little intro video that tells you what it's about, and I'd highly recommend grabbing that particular course there. Okay, Jack, we've got a few questions, I think. Beck, what do we got?
What are the main differences from AS 4801?
Okay, so today we've been talking a bit about ISO 45001. We had a question come in from one of the safety management consultants in the southern part of Australia here. What are the main differences between ISO 45001 and AS 4801? Well, the first obvious difference is one is an Australian standard and one is an international standard. There are some subtle references to employees, staff, contractors and suppliers and how they're considered. But the similarities are that the intent is the same. There's policy, hazard identification, risk assessment and control, emergency management, and system monitoring and measurement in terms of the key metrics. So that's sort of the part of the standard, and then it goes into the business improvement self-evaluation cycle, which is objectives and targets, management review, so what are we going to do and then how are we going to review it, then internal audits, a little bit about document control, a little bit about procedures, but essentially the intent of both those standards is the same and the clauses are very similar in terms of how they follow each other.
Of Wirecast.
It's really frustrating trying to get my managers to buy into this. What advice do you have?
Okay, so the question is, it's really frustrating getting my managers to buy into this. What advice have I got? I think it's important for you to show them what it looks like. So what does their support look like for you? And having that conversation. And on Monday I was shown a trust formula, so how to build trust. And there's a big part of trust which is not having the conversation in an open forum, but having the conversation one-on-one in a relaxed environment. So instead of having the conversation at a meeting room table, the conversation might be on a couch or over lunch, and it creates a certain amount of intimacy. And so my recommendation would be that the more casual the environment, it's not standing up in the middle of a building site, it's a casual conversational environment like we would at home on the couch or the lounge. I think getting a successful way that I'm finding is those casual consultative conversations where you build rapport and share knowledge. You're going to get better levels of buy-in, and then you're building on that friendship and you're working together as a team.
How much does it cost?
How much does it cost? How much does what cost? How long's a piece of string? There's two parts. So when you're starting to think about cost and budgets with regards to a safety management system, there's a number of places where resources are going to be required. There is the person to manage the safety management system in your company, which could be someone's full-time or part-time or casual, or a consultant. So somebody is responsible for managing the system. Someone's responsible for driving hazard identification, risk assessment, control, prioritization, the risk workshop, do the internal audits, run the management reviews. So that's the internal cost. There's, if you're going to run a zero harm program or campaign, who's going to pay for the posters, who's going to put them up in all the different offices. So there's the cost of the little wellness and well-being and improvement and safety programs. So external trainers, training courses, printing, consultants, evaluations, new equipment, changes to equipment, purchasing policies. So there's a sort of a budgetary operating expense or capital expense requirement. So staff, capital and operating expense requirements. And then if you're talking about certification costs are very variable, and that's the thing to jump on our website and live chat with Rowan, and Rowan can give you an indicative cost that's more specific to your organisation. So he'll ask you a few questions and then give you a ballpark figure on the website. So that's the live chat feature that's part of our website that you can ask questions any day. There's always a technical person here at Best Practice that can ask you a question, or you can send me a direct message on LinkedIn.
What is the process?
What's the process? So the process of implementing the system, I think we've covered. I think that question is about what's the process to get certified. Very important for you
This
to
is a
understand if
demonstration
you
of
meet
wirecast.
the intent of the standard. So on our website in the Training Academy, there's a checklist you can download, free gap analysis checklist. You can do it yourself. So you can jump on and you can download that and print it and do your own survey. So are you confident that you comply with the standard? Now, if you are, then we'll do a 3-step process. We'll do an on-site interview with you. We'll look at our client profile and do a risk assessment. That'll tell us how long an audit needs to be. Then we'll do a 2-part audit where we'll look at your management system, and then we'll interview your people and view how your organisation is running. And so that's the process, is to an interview. We'll review your management system, and then we'll do a whole bunch of interviews with your people. That's the process to get certified. If we see enough evidence to demonstrate that you comply with every aspect of the standard, we'll certify you, give you a certificate, and then you'll be able to use our logos, and then we'll come back and see you every 6 months to check how you're going, and then in 3 years' time we'll renew that certificate. So that's the process. So, any comments on Facebook or YouTube apart from the wirecast logo that they've so gratefully put on their slides today? No. Okay, so we're running a little bit over time. My apologies for that. I'm very grateful for everybody. I'll stay online on our Facebook page, so you can post questions or comments to the Best Practice Facebook page for the next hour. I'll monitor the Facebook page. Or more importantly, find me on LinkedIn. Let's grab that next slide for me, Jack. So find me on LinkedIn. There's my LinkedIn handle. It's @KobiSimmet on LinkedIn. There's my handle there. I'll just get off the screen. So jump across and have a look at the Best Practice YouTube channel. There's 150 videos there now. There's some of the old webinars we've run, recorded and sitting there on the YouTube channel. Lots of videos on different parts of the management system standards. Lots on quality, lots on safety. We're sending out a sort of a behind the scenes, which is a bit of a fun video once a week now, which is our vlog. We just do this weekly video log, and you can see what's happening here at Best Practice and see me in my natural environment, which is a bit of fun. There's obviously a ton of great courses over there on our website, and there's the link. But if you go to the Best Practice, so bestpracticecertification.com.au, click on the shop training button. It's a big blue button at the top of the website, and that'll take you and show you all of the great courses we've got. And I highly recommend that ISO 45001 course. Important to jump on there and get learning, because there's no restraints now. The more pressure we put on the industry, the faster the standard will get approved. And that's obviously what I want to do, is I want to get this out there. I want to get over that hurdle, get them to just decide on the standard, and then we'll just get on with it. But if you need help with your management system standard, don't be scared to ask a question. And I love those questions on LinkedIn. I get lots of messages every day. So send me a message, say hi. If there's some improvements I could make, then please let me know. If there's anything that I can improve from a presentation perspective, we will get rid of that wirecast logo. We had to switch laptops right at the go live point. We had a laptop crash on us, and we just moved across to another one, and that's why the wirecast logo is there. But we'll fix that, and equally we will email out the recording to everybody. So go right ahead. So hit subscribe to the YouTube channel. That'd be fantastic. Send me your wish list. So we're about to publish a list of webinars for the next couple of months in our new magazine, Certified, that comes out next week. So there's a great magazine that's been printed. We're printing 3,000 copies of our magazine. We're really excited about that project. It's almost finished. We're about to go to print. If you'd like a personal copy of that magazine, please send me a message on LinkedIn with your details, and then I'll organise a printed copy to be sent to you. Really exciting magazines, 24 pages of great publication, great articles, great stories, and it's coming out quarterly, and it's free. It's just more content about, it's just about helping you improve the organisations you work for. So I'm Kobi Simmet. I'm the CEO here at Best Practice. I've had a great time presenting this to you. We've got great webinars coming up, so look out for the invitations. Please share. So it's really important for us to be getting our message as far and wide as possible. So share it, copy the link, send it to your colleagues. I'd really appreciate the support of you, letting them know that we exist and that we're out there to help people and wave our flag for us. So if you enjoyed it and you really loved it, please share away. And importantly, we get some recognition of what's happening, that people like what's going on, by subscribing to our YouTube channel and having a look and commenting or liking our Facebook page. And Beck is going to be sending out some great Instagram posts. So Instagram posts every day, thumbs up. There's little Instagram posts every day. If you like them, hit the like button. If you don't like them, hit the like button anyway and comment. and we'll keep tweaking them because it's all about helping you guys. So
Demonstration
thanks very much, everybody.
Wirecast.
I'll see you next time on Best Practice TV. Bye for now.
Awesome.